So I have a question for white people, and this is a very genuine question. Please listen and give me grace. Because it seems like the only way we can have any type of discussion with y'all or conversation with y'all is if we don't include race. Everything is colorless. Everything is racially ambiguous. Even though we know there are particular issues that affect the black community that need to be addressed.
I saw this question yesterday morning while I was doom scrolling before my morning coffee. And I have so many things I want to say about it. And I'm so glad that we are going to begin this conversation. And I will give you as much grace as possible. And I ask the same grace in return because these are hard conversations to have. But the reality is, if we can start having them, we can cultivate a more productive conversation in society altogether. So let me start by just very genuinely telling you a little bit about me. I grew up, the majority of my childhood was in the 90s, right? I'm in my mid 40s and I graduated from a class of 500 kids in high school, I think 2 or 3 of which were not white. I grew up learning that civil rights happened in the 60s, that we outlawed racism, therefore it didn't exist. And I didn't witness it because of where I grew up. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that as a child, I was very ignorant to the situation. My dad had a lot of inner city friends who were Black, who were around, and my parents, in their attempt to do the best that they could do, taught us point blank that people are people. So there are good white people, there are bad white people, there are good Black people, there are bad Black people, that the color of our skin does not dictate whether you're a good or bad person. Essentially leading into the colorless culture that you see so many white people trying to possess, right? I was out of college working a full-time corporate job when Trayvon Martin first happened. I will be totally upfront and honest. Those first few cases, I didn't understand. I genuinely didn't understand. I truly believed all lives matter. Police shouldn't be killing anybody. I did not have all the facts yet. The facts, the information I had, the sources I could cite were very whitewashed, to be totally honest with you. It wasn't until this continued, I started hearing people talking bad about the countering Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter. I started doing my own research, which I can tell you fully and honestly, most humans don't do. Most humans don't dive deeper than whatever the surface level is. They don't get uncomfortable. And it was really uncomfortable. I remember the feeling of having to swallow my pride and say, holy shit, I had no idea. I was so ashamed and I was so embarrassed because I genuinely did not know that the amount of racism that was going on, the things that the Black community were facing was still in practice or in play. I had no idea, and I was in my mid-20s by that point. It was at that point in time, I think, that I began realizing that my ignorance really hurt me. And, growing up in school, when you grow up in an all-white school, as I did, you're told to look at people for who they are. Look at their actions. Their color of their skin doesn't matter. And that by you pointing out, by you acknowledging race, that in fact makes you the bad guy. It means you see them as something different than yourself. I now know that's not true, but this is what was taught to us. So I am very careful with my children. We moved into a very interracial school district. I am very, very loud with my children about the fact that Black and white people they're treated differently. That, like, for my son, we are constantly talking about the fact that there are things he can do that his Black friends will never be able to do. We're talking about the fact that my little guy's only 8, but we talk about the fact that his little friends, their moms, have different worries that I will never understand as a mom. And I can say now, I'm working with my children to move past the racism. I don't want to say that because there's no racism here. But to acknowledge the difference in race, maybe that's it. To acknowledge the difference in race, to acknowledge the fact that I know, like, I don't want to hear doctors tell me that they don't treat color any differently. The reason is because Black women are much more likely to die during childbirth than I am. Doctors should be aware of that. I don't know that they are, but I think that as a white culture that we've bought into this idea that if we talk about race, we're singling out those who don't look like us, that we're waving around our white privilege. But the reality is our white privilege exists. By staying silent, that doesn't like make our white privilege disappear. So now I'm of the sound like belief that we need to talk about this. We need to use our privilege to elevate the voices. But I hear things like, and I saw it in your comments by so many people, Morgan Freeman saying, we stop saying Black, stop saying Black man, stop saying this. But see, I don't agree with that. And in the same token, I feel better when I am scrolling and I see a Black creator call out and say white people. It makes me feel better about saying Black people. When if I'm listening to the news, I don't want to just hear about a Black man who did this. I also want to hear about a white man, a white woman. Like, I think we should be using those qualifiers. And I don't think a lot of white people agree with that, but I think we should be using those qualifiers. Because whether we want to admit it or not, the trauma of race and discrimination is buried so deep. I mean, we're talking generations and generations deep in our bones, that the only way we overcome it is by facing it head on, by acknowledging that it's there and it exists. That's all I've got.